Hey everyone, welcome back to 996 The Howl. Really quiet on the Coyotes front this offseason so far compared to last season. We just hit the 1 year anniversary time of when, the OEL and Garland trade happened, the Kemper trade, acquiring Andrew Ladd, Gostisbehere, losing Bunting in free agency. Then I think the Dvorak trade was a bit later in August maybe, but it's been quiet so far. And there's not too many more changes I foresee the Coyotes making. Still some teams over the cap. Maybe they could wheel and deal with the Coyotes. They did announce today of their new assistant coach, John Madden. Almost said Steve Madden. John Madden was with, most recently, the San Jose Sharks, who brought them to second place in their penalty kill and defensive systems. So, that's pretty big. San Jose had a bit of a rough year. They're a lottery team, but to see that they had the second highest ranked penalty kill, and considering the Coyotes had like an abysmal penalty killing percentage all season, especially to start the season, and they really wanted to work on that metric, it's a pretty good hire. Even Andrew Cogliano, when he left San Jose at the trade deadline to the Stanley Cup winning Avalanche, had good words for John Madden and said he's very detailed coach and plays the system very well in terms of the PK. So that's it. Now, because there's no news, I got to dig to the bottom of the barrel. I got about 3 of these videos, maybe 4. See if you guys can guess, which players I'm going to do these videos on. But we're going to highlight Nick Schmaltz. I rarely talk about Schmaltz, to be honest. All the attention's on Keller, or, the fall of Jacob Chikrin, or some of these exciting new guys. But Schmaltz has been there, albeit he's been injured almost every season with the Coyotes. But he's one of those players who escaped the mass exodus of last summer. He didn't have a digestible cap hit and salary last summer. But, this past season, when it was his best season in the NHL, it's been a really long time he's been in the NHL, considering he had about 3 or 4 seasons prior to Arizona with Chicago, and he's outlasted both players he was traded for, Dylan Strome and Brendan Perlini. Perlini not in the league anymore, maybe with the Oilers trying out or something, but Dylan Strome just signed with the Washington Capitals. So Schmaltz is still on the Coyotes, still producing. We'll see maybe if this continues. Maybe they hold on to him. Maybe they flip him. He's got a cap hit of, I believe, 5.8 or 5.9 million. Didn't research how many years are left, but it's a lot of years. I would say 3 more seasons left as Schmaltz. It could be 4, but he's one of our main forwards that we have signed for a long time, right next to Clayton Keller. So I think it's just Schmaltz and Keller as one of the very few forwards signed long-term on the team. But let's get into it. He had a great start with the Arizona Coyotes, getting acquired in December-ish of 2018. He had 17 games played because he got injured really quickly. 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 points, 1 even strength goal, a 2.7 points per 60 minutes on the ice, and a time on ice of about 18 minutes. That's what you want for a top-line guy, hovering around the 18-minute mark. So it's unfortunate that season ended really quickly for Schmaltz. He looked stellar next to Keller. That rhymed. And we were all excited for this, to have another young guy. Everyone thought that the trade was amazing for the Coyotes. Coyotes fans thought it was amazing. I did at the time too. Strome wasn't really going anywhere, so Schmaltz comes in, looks excellent. Him and Keller are flying. He gets injured, and the season is over. Then we go into the 1920 season, where he plays 70 games, almost all the games. Remember, it was shut down around the 72-game mark. That's the year they acquired Taylor Hall as well, so I think that's why his time on ice went down. I think he was more of a second-line guy. The top line was like Howl, Dvorak, and I think Garland. So he only had 11 goals in 70 games, pretty poor. 34 assists, not bad. Compare it to a full 82-game season. I think that's about 40 assists right there. 45 points, 9 even strength goals, 2.5 points per 60. So even though his time on ice decreased about 2.5 minutes, he still maintained a pretty consistent points per minute pace. Yeah. And then in the 21 shortened season, another pretty poor season. Only 10 goals in 52 games, 22 assists, 32 points. His points per 60 went down to 2.2, and his time on ice was 17 minutes. Both of these years, all three of these years now under Rick Tocchet, didn't really mesh well with Tocchet. We saw in that 21 season, sometimes on the fourth line, Rick Tocchet throwing him under the bus, not giving him the prime opportunities to succeed, and rarely putting Schmaltz and Keller together. There was like a brief stint during that St. Louis Blues 7-game stretch where it was Keller, Schmaltz, and Garland. And then they had one bad game, I guess, against Vegas, and it never was put together ever again. Tocchet always had a problem with putting Schmaltz and Keller together, but thankfully, Rick Tocchet and the Coyotes parted ways, and then Andre Tourigny comes into the fold for the most recent season, and it's just stellar metrics across the board. 63 games played. He did have an injury. 23 goals, 36 assists, 59 points, 19 even strength goals, 3.1 points per 60, getting back to an 18 minutes time on ice. So he's playing more, he's producing more. These metrics and point totals are even more than he ever got in Chicago. So this was a career year for Nick Schmaltz. Unfortunately, he had an injury after October, but he looked different. He started the season really poorly. I guess we'll get to here. Schmaltz is one of those guys who I say tends to ghost at times, just like Clayton Keller had the same metrics on the board for Keller. So I think of a ghost as going 4 games in a row with no points. And, he gets 2 of these per season, but, they used to be really long. So he had 2 in 19 and 20. I didn't count 18 and 19. He only played 17 games. He had a 7-game pointless streak and a 5-game pointless streak. Then the next season, he had another 2 streaks, 5 games each. And then this most recent season, to start the season, 5 games of no points. And everyone was starting to get on him. Just like Chychrun had a rough start. Even Keller had a bit of a rough start to the year. Just the whole team took a really long time to get adapted to the new coaching system, the new style of play. But once it clicked, and they just went off running and producing. And then the 4-game pointless streak came in between the end of December and beginning of January. So after the first week of January, Schmaltz was a consistent producer. He had that 7-point game. He had a 4-point game right after that 7-point game. He was just firing on all cylinders and put up some really good numbers that pretty much no one outside of the Coyotes even talks about. Some other more analytical stats you'll see here, there might be a problem now. He has an 18.7% shooting percentage, which is really high and really unsustainable. So we'll see. That number is going to come down, full stop. Like, that number is going to come down. So maybe his goal totals won't be as high next season. But to be honest, he missed about 19 games. So he could still hit and eclipse a 20-goal mark. But, you can see that he never played any shorthanded minutes under Rick Tocchet. If you look into the amount of shorthanded minutes, it's like 1 minute per season. And that's just Rick Tocchet throwing Schmaltz out if, there's 2 seconds left before the penalty expires. But something happened under Andre Tourigny. What happened around when Keller got injured. They needed more players on the penalty kill and who could do a good job. We saw Barrett Hayden take over Clayton Keller's main penalty killing duties. Lawson Krause was also injured, who was a big penalty killer. So Nick Schmaltz steps in, gets about 30 seconds per game on shorthanded time on ice. That's nothing to sniff at. Under Rick Tocchet, you would never see Nick Schmaltz on a penalty kill. I'm sure Rick Tocchet couldn't believe his eyes either when he saw Schmaltz killing penalties. But even his face-off numbers have steadily increased. They seem to have stalled under Rick Tocchet. And then, boom, a new coaching staff, 47.7%. That's great numbers. You want to be around 50. So if we can see that increase just a little bit, that would be great as well. And then takeaways, he's a great player at stripping the pucks from the opposition. You always see he hustles hard on the back check to steal pucks away. So he hits his other career high of 52, but in 7 less games. So if he played a full season, you can see that takeaway number go up to about 60. And then we look at how is Nick Schmaltz deployed on the ice. Because sure, you could give him a 15 minutes, on average ice time, or 18 minutes. If he's always on the offensive face-off, for sure he's going to eclipse those, production numbers in terms of goals, assists, and points. But that's not the case. He's playing more of a defensive role at the same time, increasing his points per 60 and getting a career year. We saw this with Clayton Keller. I'll link it down below, my video of Clayton Keller. I did it in the middle of the season when he got honored to go to the All-Star game. But to play such a defensive role, killing penalties, taking and executing on face-offs, but also starting in a more balanced approach. He's not starting 75% of the time in the offensive zone on a face-off. He's starting about 55-45, which you want to see. This shows that the coaching staff trusts him. They're not always putting him in the best position possible, which Rick Tocchet was trying to do. I mean, look at this. 72 to 27%. Like 72% of the time in the 21 shortened season, Nick Schmaltz was on the ice to start his shift in the offensive zone face-off dot. So it's great to see it come down and be more balanced, at the same time execute a way he's never done before. And then multi-point games, just like Clayton Keller, he loves to score in bunches. He's a streaky player, but we're starting to see that turn, with the ghost games being brought down from 7. Hopefully he doesn't have too many of those up in this upcoming season. But in terms of multi-point games, 4, 10, 6, and 14 last season, which matches Keller's career high of 14 multi-point games in one season. So he was feeling it last season, and it's good, even though we had a really bad season in terms of the standings, it was great to see guys like Schmaltz, Keller, Krause, Boyd, and, even Barrett Hayden, although he hasn't played too much hockey in his career, they all had successful individual seasons. And hopefully that continues. And I also want to talk about how everyone was saying, Andre Tourigny is a development coach. He's good at developing young players. And this is it. You can see the stark difference between Rick Tocchet and the Nick Schmaltz era under Rick Tocchet, the Clayton Keller era under Rick Tocchet, the Lawson Krause era under Rick Tocchet. Then look at 1 year with a new coach, a new system, and they just explode both offensively and defensively. It just really doesn't make sense how they're just all well-rounded, just much better players under a new coaching staff. And, now we go into next season. We're going into the second year under Andre Tourigny. You don't want to see these numbers drop. Now, a lot of these numbers, not a lot, some of them might be unsustainable. The shot percentage is for sure, for me, a number that's unsustainable. Maybe the face-off percentage. I really don't see him being a mainstay penalty killer. I just thought it was really good to see him kill penalties, but he was only there because of injuries. As opposed to Keller, I like him on the penalty kill. He was on the penalty kill for the whole season, not just when they had injuries. So I like that Keller's getting that part of his game well-rounded. But for Schmaltz, I don't expect him to be such a defensive dynamo. It's great to see that the coach trusts him. It's great to see that Schmaltz, embraced the penalty killing situation and embraced being more of a defensive player, and at the same time his offensive production increase as well. So that's what I like to see. I'm not going into the next season expecting him to be the same defensive type of guy, but I want to see the same pace, if not more, under a new season with Andre Tourigny. I think this season it will take them less time to acclimate to the new coaching system. And, we saw that even after December. They had a short pause in December, about 2 weeks. They came back in January, and they were a bit off for a couple weeks, and they got back on the horse. They had a good string of games at the end of January, February, even March was a good time for the Coyotes. And then when everyone got injured really quickly and they brought in new players, they went on a dive again. And then just in the last week or two of this season, they started to win games again. So that shows me that this team really, if they stay with the system and learn it and practice it a lot, they play good. But when they go on weeks or they get a lot of injuries and they have to inject new players who don't know the system, that's when the wheels sort of fall off. So I'm not saying they're going to be really good this season, especially with the current goalie tandem. But, when people say, oh, the Coyotes are just going to finish last, it's like, sure, I understand that if you look at their goalies and maybe their defense is a bit weak. But, if Schmaltz, Keller, Krause, Hayden continue to have career years, and even, Travis Boyd has another career year being paired with Schmaltz and Keller, it's like, they could probably leapfrog Chicago for last place in the Central. But just the point of this video is to show that Schmaltz had a career year. Not too many people talk about him. He might be on the trading block at the trade deadline or next off season if the Coyotes want to get, another first round draft pick in the draft, or just want to inject new talent and they feel like Cooley and Gunther and Doan are progressing really well. They don't really have room for Schmaltz in the top 6. We could see a trade for Schmaltz, and players of that other team he gets moved to could look back at this video and say, hey, Schmaltz really grew from his time in Chicago and his time under Rick Tocchet, and this is the type of player he is, and he could still become a better player, but that remains to be seen. I just really liked the year he had. I like all the metrics. The only kind of bad metrics I found, just to be, apparent, his possession numbers weren't really good, and he had a lot of giveaways. But, the possession numbers, it's a team game. I mean, you're on with your defensemen giving up possession and your other forwards giving up possession. And the Coyotes are really bad at possessing the puck this season. That's what I want them to work on and to improve on, along with the penalty kill and power play. The giveaways were high, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So that's it for me. Just want to talk about Nick Schmaltz. Just want to talk about something Coyotes related, because it's pretty dried up out there in terms of Coyotes news. I know there's so much other news regarding the NHL and trades and Kachuk and Huberdeau, but for the Coyotes it's pretty quiet. Maybe it's better that way, but still want to provide some content and talk about my favorite team. So that's it for me. Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, spread the word. And as always, thank you for your support.